Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Michael Mojo. He's a mindset and mental performance coach for some of the Australia's top rich listeners, listers, industry leaders, athletes, and business teams. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Excellent. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the show, Michael. You're welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to discuss about. We'll be talking about how to get the most out of life. So, my first question to you, Michael, you are a mindset and mental performance coach. Everyone wants to get the most out of who they are, what they are. So, how do I get the most of my life? What are the ingredients that I can look at? Okay, this is what I can look at and bring the most. What holds the most about me inside my life?
Excellent. I'm glad you asked. So look, the first thing, I have a formula that I always use with business people and also non-business people. And that is clarity times by standards plus environment equals success. So the first step is getting clarity. And if there's two key things that we want to look at. So if you're in business, we need clarity on the business and the business plan. But if it's for your own personal life, it really comes down to your own individual success map. Now, there are two key pillars of that success map. The first pillar is fulfillment, and the second pillar is direction. So what we have to figure out is what fulfills us. From studying thousands of high-level people, something that I've noticed, and I mean, most people know this anyway, but the first thing is that if you're going to do something, normally if you want to achieve at a high level, you have to be doing it for a long period of time. Very rarely does an overnight success happen without, a decade of putting in the work beforehand. So we have to think about what is it that really fulfills us. So the way that we do that is we have to get clear first of our own individual and unique value structure. Once we understand our values and our priorities in life, then we can figure out our life purpose. Now, there was a famous quote from Michelangelo, and someone asked him, "How do you carve such amazing sculptures?" And they pointed towards the statue of David. And he said, "I carve away all the rock that's not David." So when we're getting clear on our values and our purpose, we're essentially chipping away everything that's not us. So that starts to remove parents' expectations, family expectations, society's expectations, what you were told at school. You have to clear all that stuff away so you can see who you are as a person and what you really love to do. If not, most people spend their life trying to figure out what they want to do, where they want to go, how to achieve success. It's already there. They just have to let it out. So values first, purpose second, and then you have to understand what lifestyle balance looks like for you. Now, when you understand your lifestyle balance, that it doesn't mean work-life balance. It means how do you live and structure your own life? For me, I have a high value on physical exercise. So I like to move for about 2 hours per day minimum. But I also love working and I love business. So I work for, 10 to 12 hours every day, almost 7 days a week, and I love it. Now, most people can't do that because it's outside of their lifestyle balance. They might have family. And so family to them, they might need 3 or 4 hours a day with their family. I personally don't. That's why values comes before purpose, which comes before balance. Because you need to know how to structure your life so that you can operate at your best. That's pillar number one. Pillar number two is our direction. Where are we going? To do that, we're going to look at our visions, which are what consistent visions occupy our mind about the future. Then we grab that and we turn it into a mission, a direction, an end result for our life, something that we keep aiming for. And then from there, we break that down into goals. Now, if we've got clear visions that consistently pop up into our mind, it's telling us that there's something that we're destined to do. The mission gives us direction and the goals give us stop-off points along the journey. Now, if we put fulfillment and our direction together, we essentially have a path that's fulfilling for us that we're probably going to execute on for a long period of time. Then from there, all we have to do is just get our mindset right. If we put the mindset with the clarity of direction and the clarity of fulfillment, we can win the game of life.
Right, right. So you talked about clarity, you talked about direction. Are there anything else that one needs to take care of? Or I can come to the other questions.
So the first thing is clarity, which when we break that down individually, that comes from our fulfillment pillar, from our direction pillar, and then essentially it's how we train our mind. The next thing after that is we have to understand what standards we want to live by. Some people want to create billion-dollar enterprises and billion-dollar businesses that
Okay.
change the world. Some people want to create million-dollar businesses that have a local impact. And then some people, they just want to work to make enough money to make sure that their family have food, and then they just want to enjoy life. There's no right or wrong. It depends on what's unique to you. We all have a set of standards that we want to live by. And so if we know what those standards are, then we can keep increasing them and growing. I think everybody's aware that anything in nature that doesn't grow dies, and anything in the universe that doesn't expand contracts. So I'm always thinking about growth and expansion, because if not, we're contracting and dying. And so I think that it's really important to understand that our standards are consistently pushing us to grow and expand as a person. Also, something that most people avoid when it comes to their own individual standards is that when we're talking about expansion, normally expansion happens through pressure. So we have to have pressure in our life to expand. Also, stress causes growth. You know, if we want to develop big, strong muscles, we've got to lift something heavy enough in order to stress the muscle so that it grows. Now, most people, especially in Australia here, most Australians, they want less stress and they want less pressure. But what we know about that is that less stress and less pressure means less growth and less expansion. So essentially, they're contracting and dying as they get older. I don't think that that's a good idea. I think the greatest people on the planet are always looking, how can I expand? How can I grow? They know that you don't get to a spot with your finances where you just relax forever and everything's easy. Normally, people who keep growing want to grow their wealth. They want to grow their health. They want to grow their family dynamic or their relationships or the way that they communicate or their influence. So they're always looking for growth no matter where they're at in life. That seems to be the key for consistent growth and enjoyment throughout life. So we have clarity times by standards. And then the final thing is the environment. Wherever we put ourselves, whether it's in a group of friends, whether it's in an economic environment, whether it's in a business environment, whether it's exercising, people either tend to pull us up to their standards or they pull us down to their standards. So we have to choose how we want to live life. If we have high standards, we're going to want to try and pull people up to our standards. But we're also going to want to surround ourselves with people who pull us up to their standards also. What we have to be careful of is people trying to pull us down to their standards, because then we lower our standards also. And that's not really fulfilling. So we've got to make sure we put ourselves in an environment that allows us to grow, to optimize, to be better, to improve, to grow. So that's essentially the key pillars there. We have clarity, times by standards, plus the environment. If we keep growing those areas and we stay clear, we stay fulfilled, then we can keep winning in life. I don't believe that success is a point that's ever really achieved. We have moments where we feel successful, we have moments where we feel unsuccessful, but it's always pushing us to grow and expand and become better. The more that we can stay fulfilled within our own journey and within our own life means that we're going to keep at it. Normally, when someone starts something and gives up, it's because it never really had meaning to them, or they're doing it for the wrong reasons. Maybe they're trying to please their parents, they're trying to please friends, they're trying to get some sort of credit from people in society. I don't think that that's a good idea. I think we're all born with a gift and a talent, and then it's our job to go find it and then give it to the world.
Right, right, Michael. So, where does the mindset and mental performance coach come in between? There are so many things that needs to be done to, to get the best out of one's life. Where
Yes.
do you come in? Where do people need your help? You work with Australia's top rich listers, industry leaders, athletes, and business teams. So that's a lot of achievers there. Though a lot of people want to enjoy their time at the beach having some beer, but that's a lot of people who are even working very hard across the world. All they want to do is to work for by the age of 30, 35, and then spend their time at the beach with all the money that they have got. So a lot of people just directly go and enjoy at the beach with a bottle of beer in hand. So I want to understand then that what is the problem with people that they generally come to you for? What is it that they have problems with and that you solve? That way, it will give
Yeah.
an understanding of the things getting done on the ground.
Yeah, so I think if we go back and we look at some of the great texts that were written. So if we go back to the Bible, or even if we go back to the Greek era, they had something called the 8 evil thoughts, or the 7 deadly sins. Now, when we look at the 7 deadly sins, they talk about things like gluttony. They talk about things like lust. They talk about chasing these pleasures, I guess you could say, or chasing our passions. So for thousands of years, all of the great theologies, all of the great thinkers, all of the great philosophers have spoken about being very careful of chasing the passions. So most people say that they want to do things that they're passionate about, but I don't like using that language. The reason is that the etymology of the history, or the word, the etymology of the word passion, means to suffer. And that's because I think when people chase their passions, it seems nice on the outside, but it always has consequences. Now, I would love to spend my day drinking beer down at the beach. The problem with that is you become fat, you become lazy, you become complacent. When you're doing that, you're not working towards something fulfilling. Now, I know that based on, anyone who wants any form of mastery or self growth, which I assume is most of your audience, that the greatest day that we can have is the day that we work really, really hard, we overcome some challenges, and at the end of the day, we go, I did well today. That doesn't come from sitting on the beach. That comes from doing something productive. There seems to be a pattern that when humans are productive and they overcome challenges or adversity, they get that self fulfillment, that self love, the self respect, the self confidence. So, what I believe is that I'm not telling anybody how to live, but there seems to be a bunch of people in our society that say, you know what? I want to wake up, I want to work hard, and I'm put on this earth to do something, and I want to see what I'm capable of. And they have this deeper desire to want to grow, to want to be better, to want to learn. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't need times of reflection and we don't need holidays and things like that in order to internalize and figure things out. But I don't think that drinking beer every day or just relaxing most of your life is the solution. Nor do I think large amounts of money that are unpurposeful or unpurposefully allocated are a smart idea either. When someone is gifted money and they don't have a purpose, they tend to not only destroy their wealth, but they destroy their life. When someone works extremely hard for their money and they feel purposeful, they'll keep working. And that's why if we have a look at the rich list, the global rich list, the majority of people in that rich list are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and even 80s, and Warren Buffett in his 90s. They still want to work because they realize that being purposeful in life is one of the greatest gifts that we're given. So I think a lot of people work hard to try to avoid work, but I think that's a really bad strategy. I think we need to find something that's fulfilling for us, something that we feel purposeful in, something that keeps us growing. And then I personally believe that life is about self-discovery. It's about learning what we're capable of, what we're here to do, and then give our gifts to the world. And that doesn't come from being lazy or complacent or, not doing much. So in response or in answer to your question, the mindset coach like me normally comes in where someone realizes that something isn't working and there's a gap between where they are and their goals, their ambitions, or their dreams. Now, sometimes I get messages where somebody has hit rock bottom. Their wife's left or their husband's left and they don't know what to do. Sometimes I get it where they go to the doctors and the doctor says, right, if you don't lose weight or you don't look after yourself, you're potentially going to kill yourself. So sometimes I get those real sort of challenging situations. Sometimes people just wake up, like the majority of people just wake up, they look in the mirror one day and go, wow, where did all this come from? I need to do something. Or they look in their bank account and they go, I've been working for 20 years and I'm still in the same position I was 20 years ago, which is stressed about money, frustrated, feeling like I'm working hard and not getting anywhere. Something has to change. So there's normally a point that occurs in their life where the pain is enough and that they realize that they just can't do it themselves. Now, I have coaches because I think it's easy to see other people's problems than it is to see our own. So I would rather have a coach who can just walk in and tell me what the problem is, and then I can fix it versus trying to fix it myself and not even realize what it is. Um, Only recently, my mentor that I have, he just sold a company for $1.2 billion Australian. And I was working on part of our key strategy for this year. And I spent 2 weeks, myself and my wife, who runs our company, we're sitting there trying to figure this problem out. Anyway, he walks in, he looks at the whiteboard. I asked him the question. And about 2 minutes later, he starts whiteboarding everything out and drawing things up. And within about 30 minutes, we had the whole problem solved. And I said, "How did you do that?" And he said, "You're too close." Sometimes when you're too close to a problem, you just can't step back enough to see the actual solution. And he said, "Look, I had to do the same thing with my team a couple of weeks ago. I couldn't figure something out. I worked on it for a week, called them in, we sat down, we brainstormed, and the problem was solved in a couple of hours." I think having a coach gives you external perspective. They can see things that you can't see because you're either emotionally involved or you're too close or you've got some sort of attachment to whatever the outcome is. And so I think that there are a bunch of people out there that realize that they need a coach, or they've hit rock bottom and they realize they can't figure it out. The other time is that I get a lot of high performers who come to me and say, "I want to be better." Now, they're the people that realize that life is always peaks and troughs, but they want to go in that direction, even though they have peaks and troughs, versus most people in society. They have a peak and then they have a trough and they end up back in that rock bottom again. Then they have a peak, a trough, and rock bottom again. So the high performers realize that they can't have that trough. They have to keep going in the upward direction, even though they will be ups and downs. And so they normally reach out. Now, sometimes even the high performers, like the rich listers, they'll reach out because their relationship fell apart. You know, they've worked so hard for 20 or 30 years and they've made all this money, but then they keep putting their relationship second. And eventually their partner says, "You know what, enough's enough." I wish that it didn't get there. I wish they would come to me beforehand. And unfortunately, sometimes people have known about me for multiple years. They keep putting it off and they think they'll fix it, they'll fix it, they'll fix it. And then all of a sudden the problem happens. And normally when I get somebody who has a lot of money and their relationship falls apart, I remind them that, especially in Australia, normally they have to split the wealth 50-50. And I tell them, can you see that if you just put 5% or 10% of your week into your relationship, you would have 50% more money, or actually it would be 100% more. Okay. And they start realizing that they have to look after other areas of life that are important, not just money and wealth. Okay. So that's normally when people reach out to me.
Absolutely, absolutely. High performers sometimes forget about the real performance in relationships and the real actual relationship that matter. Be that as it may, let's talk about, you talk about clarity, you talk about values, and you also talk about being too close to the problem or be situation. When one wants to analyze about their own core values, how do they do it independent of the situation that they are in? Either one is born into a very rich family or a very poor family.
Yeah.
Many a times people think of either being in a survival mode and then later on think like security needs and self-actualization. So how do I create a value system or create my core values or understand my core values despite whatever situations I am in? Because so will my value guide me or will my situation guide my value when I am thinking of whatever I want to do in life?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there's multiple ways of looking at values, and having studied the system of axiology, which is the study of value structures. Um, there's lots of different theories around values. Now, sometimes countries have value structures, and they tell everybody that that's the value structure. From what I've seen, though, is that a lot of people will say these are my values because it's a social norm or it's a societal norm. But I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that it's just a conditioning. I meet some people, they'll say religion is my highest value, or God is my number one. But when I watch their behaviors don't suggest that that is true. Sometimes people say my family is my number one. But if I have a look at how they structure their life, it's not structured towards family, it's structured towards something else. So what happens in that situation is that there is a lot of what is known as implanted values. So people say, this is my highest value because that's what society tells me it is, but that's not my real value. What my real value is how I prioritize my life. So if someone works a lot, I would say that probably work or career is one of their highest values, because it's not just what they think it is, it's how they actualize it, what they actually do every day. So if I look at my life is prioritized in a way where I work a lot. I spend a lot of time teaching, coaching, and educating. I spend a lot of time studying and learning. I spend a lot of time building my business and generating wealth. And then I spend a lot of time exercising. So if I have a look at what I spend the majority of my time doing, it tells me my values. If someone says I have a high value on exercise, yet they exercise one time a month and then blame everybody else as to the reason why they're not exercising, that's not a real value. We always find ways to do the things that we want. The guilt and shame, though, normally comes in because of the other people's external values pushing onto us. We have a lot of, especially mums. Mums come to my events sometimes and they'll say, family is my highest value. Yet when I look at their life, they might spend, let's say, 60 hours a week working in a high-level corporate business. That then doesn't suggest that family is their number one value. It's either wealth creation, it might be career growth or something like that. Their life normally demonstrates it. You can have two people in the same environment, the same socioeconomic environment. One goes and finds time to exercise and the other one says, I can't because I've got to work. And then they blame work because they're unfit. But the truth is the other person found time, they just didn't. Why? Because one person has a high value on exercise and the other one doesn't. That's the real truth. Normally when people blame external circumstances, it's not the circumstance, it's the value. We make time to do things that are important for us. Some people can be born in the lowest of low socioeconomic area and they will find a way of making money. They will hustle, they will steal, they will do whatever they can to get money. And over time, over their life, their wealth keeps growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. Other people, they have large amounts of wealth, maybe they've inherited it and they'll lose it all because they have a low value on wealth creation. And then you have some people who have a sort of a level where it just is average and it doesn't grow, it just stays the same. But what you'll find is the areas of growth that they consistently have, they're in alignment with their values. So the easiest way that I learn about people's values, normally if I'm working with someone, is I ask them, what does their life demonstrate? What do they do consistently? What have they done consistently for the last 5, 6, 7 years? When I meet people who say, I've been thinking about starting a business, yet they never start a business, that tells you that business isn't important. It might be, but it might be down the list somewhere. So it might be value number 7 or 8 or 10 or 15. So they have 15 other things that they need to prioritize before they start a business. Got to look after the family. You know, food and nutrition is important. Exercise is important. Maybe beauty is important. So they'll prioritize all these other things, and that's why they keep putting it off. So if we remember that our self-sabotage patterns are just telling us that we're not prioritizing things effectively, okay, based on our values. So I think values are probably the most critical thing a human can learn if they want to be successful. The hardest part is that you've got to break out of all of the family, social, society value structures that are put onto us. Because some people know that they want to build a business, but they feel like they can't because they've got to look after their family and so on. And it creates this internal, I guess, stress where they know what they want to do, but there's all this pressure from the outside and they feel trapped. That's a really bad place to be in. But the truth is you've got to prioritize what's important for you if you want to thrive in life.
Right, Michael. So, in terms of, if you have figured out a lot of things, but still there are things, your own mindset that holds you back. How do you recognize that these are the patterns that I need to, first take care of and then chart my way in life? People don't even know if they are in a particular environment, that this is something that's going to hurt them in the longer run. Many a times leaders find that it has got something to the childhood trauma or something like that, imposter syndrome. All these things are being talked about nowadays. So what are the things that can hold people back, and how do I make sure that when I start that journey towards success and achieving the best for myself, I take care of these things at the very beginning itself, so that my journey is not interrupted.
I wish there was a simple answer for that question, but there's not. Not that I've ever come across. And as you can see, I study a lot.
Right.
The way that I normally answer a question like that is, how do we know that life isn't a test to see how much we want it? And therefore, every day, the obstacle is actually the thing that gives us the strength in order to build us to get ready for the next level. What I know, especially about building a business and doing what I've done, is that I thought when I was younger that if I made more money, life would become easier. But it actually becomes more challenging. Now, if I'm not ready for the challenges, then I'm going to lose everything that I've worked hard for. So just like going to the gym, if I want to lift heavy weights, I have to start light, but it feels heavy. And then I have to keep building that strength. But you never get strong enough in order to lift all the weights. There's always more that you can add to the bar. And so I because I love the gym, I feel like that's a great metaphor for life. In business, if you've never to make in Australia to make your first $5,000, that's tough, and it takes a lot of work. But then to get to $50,000, that's tough, and then to get to $100,000, that's tough. Then to make your first million, every level is really, really tough because all it does is it just creates new problems. And what I know about human behavior is that humans solve problems and we create another problem. Therefore, problems seem to be part of the growth cycle. When we overcome problems, we build our self-worth, our self-love, our self-respect, our competency, our networks, the way we think through things. So we need to have these problems, which are obstacles, so that then we can overcome them. And I'm 100% sure that adversity is the solution to growth. If we don't have adversity, we do not grow. Now, everyone wants the clear path. It's almost like we want to be on a highway and there's no other cars around, and we just sit on the highway and we just drive. And there's a beautiful direction. But life's not like that. When you're on the highway and you're driving along and you think everything's going well, the next second the tire blows off the car and then you've got to learn how to fix that. Then you get driving again and then it rains and it's heavy. There's always these challenges that are popping up. So I believe that the more that you achieve, the harder life gets, because you're stronger, you're more intelligent, you're more effective, you've got greater networks. And so you've got to lean on all of those skill sets to get to that next level. And it's the same with professional sport. It's tough when you start as a child, but every level you go to, it's just a whole nother level of competition. Everyone's more skilled, everyone's better than you, and then you have to learn how to get better. And I believe life is exactly like that, whether it's business, family's the same. I'm not sure if you have children, but when you have children, I'm sure you just start to learn how to deal with a newborn baby. And then the next second it starts crawling and you're like, I just figured out all this stuff and now it's like different. And then, then it becomes a teenager and then it's an adult. And so you're always learning how to grow more you have to learn more about yourself as a parent. It's not about the child, it's about your growth. Life is like that in every area of life. As I get fitter and healthier now, I just turned 40. As I get fitter and healthier, my age is working against me now. So I just start to learn things about my body and I go, whoa, things are starting to change. So then I have to learn more. I have to grow more. I have to adapt. So I think, look, if I was a god and I put humans on this planet and I wanted to be entertained, I would create obstacles that no matter what you do, there's always going to be one. And then I would just watch people play the game. And I think that's the fun of life, is if we just get out there and play the game, there's always obstacles, there's always challenges. By the time we figure something out, everything's changed and we have to evolve again and learn. So I believe that part of evolution is that we learn things. And when I look at based on science, the only thing that seems to evolve is information. And so we can keep learning information. And the more we learn, the more we realize there is to learn. And maybe it's this never ending, infinite learning cycle. I don't know. I don't really know. I don't have an answer to it. But I just think that that seems to be pretty logical for the human experience. That every time we learn something, there's just more new stuff to learn. And the things that we don't know and we don't understand, we call problems and challenges. But when we learn about them, we realize that there was a pattern and a structure to it. And now that way we become wise. And then we go on to the next problem and the next challenge. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, yes, indeed, indeed. And you don't have to become God to put more obstacles in people's life in a positive way. Already there are problems people create. There are enough obstacles to be taken care of, and if not, the human mind will create obstacle for not only others but themselves, including stress. Now
I
let's look
agree.
at it, this situation. You see, you talk about working 7 days a week, no problem. Many people are fighting, looking at the great resignation. People don't want to work much more than 3 days, 4 days, or four, because they want family. So that is another aspect of it. A lot of people uh, can do with this sort of a stress. They can take, they can work hard, they can do continue to work hard. A lot of people cannot. So all those people whom you think that stress is a good thing to a certain extent, and at the same time your focus is to create change so that people don't end stressed up, burned out, tired, self-destructive, and living in unhealthy and unfulfilled lifestyle. How should people look at stress in a positive manner and not a negative manner? For example, for a soldier, the army might say, okay, go to war, be ruthless, kill the enemy, emerge victorious. But when the same soldier comes up, that same lifestyle or that same level of stress leads to stress disorders and destruction for the soldier itself. How do you look at stress and success and high performance in that aspect?
That's a really great question again. So again, it comes down to value structures. When you have a look at someone like if I look at the US Special Forces, in there they tend to have similar values. So in order to make it to the Special Forces, you normally have to have a high value on experiences where you can be dropped anywhere on the planet and you'll survive and you sort of enjoy it, right? Then you also have to have a high value on mateship or friendship or leadership, or because you've got to be able to trust all of those people around you as well, and you have to be able to live in really close quarters, so you know everything about those people. You also have to have a high value of physical fitness and physical performance. It's very, very hard to become a high level special forces operative in any army around the planet without those three values or something similar. If you take someone who has a low value on experience, a low value on physical fitness, they would never even make it to that level because they'd just get shot on the first day and die. So normally the military attract a certain type of individual unless it's forced. So when we come back to it, people can say, I want a business, but without having the value structure, they won't be able to handle the stress. The higher the value, the higher stress we can handle. When I'm working with a professional athlete, they normally have a really high value. If not number one, it'll be number two. If they're a world champion, their highest value is physical fitness. Their whole life revolves around it. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's all that's on their mind is just competing. They will give up everything. They give up their friends, they give up their family. They do whatever it takes in order to do that thing, which is why they're world champions. When you take an amateur sports person, they have other things. So they normally have high values of family or friendship, or it might be career or work or money. And so they're sort of good, but they just never really reach that higher level because they can't get rid of everything else. Now, every human being in order to grow has to have stress. So having children is extremely stressful. Now, some people love having families and other people don't. That's because to the person who doesn't have a high value of family, having children causes distress. Whereas to the other person, it causes something called eustress, and eustress is optimized growth. So when we look at our values, it's really our values that determine how much stress we can take on. You know, some people, like you look at Elon Musk, he hardly even cracks a sweat having to go to find $40 billion to buy Twitter. He just buys it and then he goes, I'll figure out how to get the money. And then he works his butt off for 2 to 3 weeks or a month to get all the money. Some people can't even figure out in a month how to make an extra $100. And that's too stressful for them. So it all comes down to the value structure, really. And then on top of that, it depends on how you learn how to use your mind. I believe that based on most of the people that I've worked with, the more you can educate someone how their mind works, and a lot of these little patterns, like something that I teach everybody is that problems never go away. They only just get bigger. So now you have to find, what problems do I want to solve in my life? What problems do I want in my life? Some people say things like, I want to be a millionaire. And I say, well, that's great. But are you prepared to take on the challenges that millionaires face? No one sues a broke person. They only sue rich people, right? Then you've got insurance, you've got taxation. Are you prepared for all of those challenges? Then you've got family problems. People expect more from you. If you start to show off your wealth, then you start getting more judgment and more criticism. Are you prepared for all those things? And they normally go, oh, yeah, sort of. And I go, well, not really. So I try to teach people, don't just think about what you want, think about what problems that you want to try to solve and what problems are you going to be okay with within your life. If you don't want to be in an intimate relationship and you can't handle someone else that's different than you and living in close proximity, then maybe an intimate relationship's not for you. But for those who think, you know what, I love being around somebody who's always changing and adapting and evolving, and the more I get to, the more time I spend with them, the more I learn about them, and the more entertaining my life is, now you enjoy your intimate relationship versus seeing it as being high stress. Now, there's always stress and there's always problems in every relationship, but are they the problems and the stresses that you want in your life, or is that something that you don't want? You have to really define how you want to live life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that great, helping us understand different aspects, but there is so much to understand and learn more. So for those people who want to learn about you, learn more from you, and also engage you as a mindset and mental performance coach, what is the best way for them to connect with you, Michael?
My website, which is michaelmojo.com, or you can find me on any social media platform. If you type in Michael Mojo 00, it will normally come up with my social media thread. I think all of them, apart from one, has the blue tick, so that'll be mine. That's probably the best way to find me.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.